at what point does at what point is it technically a mob or like mob mentality? You know, because I had a joke where I was saying, you know, I don't like parades or riots. I don't like very large gatherings of people. With a parade, people were hanging around like actually waiting for action, and I almost feel like when it comes to like that instant before a riot, it's sort of there's something that's going to happen to just set things off. Maybe you talk about that just a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of like mobs happen under like two circumstances I can kind of think off the top of my head. One is when any given individual doesn't really know what the right thing to do is, and so
Hmm.
they start to look around and try to figure out what everybody else is doing. And two, when there's a sense of, well, I don't have any personal responsibility in this, that I'm just part of the crowd, and so nobody's going to pick me out of the crowd necessarily. So we kind of can lose our individuality in those situations. But there's a lot of psychology experiments that kind of look at how people behave when they're in a group. And there's these studies where they kind of set like one person up to be in a group of people, and all the other people are in on the experiment, right? And these other people will do something or say something that is obviously ridiculous or untrue, and that one person who's not in on it, who really is the actual participant, will tend to kind of go along with what the crowd is doing. We tend to kind of conform to what everybody else is doing, and it can become worse, if you will, if there's a moral component to it. So if there's a sense of like, you're a bad person if you don't do what everybody else is doing. And I kind of remember, like, again, the early days of the pandemic. I think it was the NBA. I'm not a big sports person at all. My wife actually, in fact, my wife is watching a hockey game right now. She's a big sports person. So I remember it was, again, so like early March, mid-March, somewhere in there, and the NBA canceled their season, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that probably was the right thing to do. I mean, I'm not a public health person, so I'm not doubting that at all. But once they did it, it was very clear that like everybody else was going to have to cancel everything too at that point. Not in the sense of public health, but nobody wanted to be, that guy who waited,
Right,
for more
right.
information, and then somebody died, which is understandable. I'm not questioning that decision. But when there is that kind of pressure, then you can see people kind of like go with the flow because they don't want to seem like they're bucking the moral trend, if you will.
You know, it's so interesting that that you bring up that experiment about. I guess it would be kind of like a conformity experiment, because
Mhm.
I remember I was in grade school and we went on a school trip, and I forget where we went exactly, but the whole class was basically sitting in a circle, and me and my best friend Reggie, who both of us actually happen to have the same birthday as well, February 26th. It's coming up, ladies and gentlemen. Um, we were told to leave the room, right? So we left the room, then we came back, and then there were a series of questions that were asked, and the response was, if you believe it was true, you're supposed to raise your hand. And something I noticed, and I don't remember what the exact questions were, but the uh the answer was wrong. It was just flatly wrong. You know, it was like the idea of, you know, it's a bright sunny day, and then everybody in the room is saying, yes, it's raining outside, and they raise their hand, and we were looking around, and I was really and you know, I was a kid, I didn't know what was going on. But I like to, you know, I'm happy to say that I passed without conforming to the herd, and I think my friend did as well. It might have been that maybe the two of us were kind of looking at each other like, this doesn't seem right. And it was only after that I guess um, you know, the purpose of the test was, you know, was told to us. But it is really interesting, you know, how that, you know, how that happens. And I find it, you know, sometimes I spend a lot of my life on social media, and sometimes I'll come across, say, like a post, and I'll say, oh, I agree with that, but hold on, let me see the person posting this. Let me see what they have in their bio to see if they're, you know, they're a true ally, and all that. And that's such a, it's odd, but I get it, and it kind of makes sense. But you know, I don't know how to fight against that on a mass scale in particular.